Today's Learn and Share conference call is entitled Maximizing Independence with Epilepsy, and we're very pleased to have with us today Amber Vondra, who's a transition coordinator with Disability Advocates of Kent County, Susan Woolner, who's a patient supports coordinator for Mercy Health Hauenstein Neurosciences, and Sarah Green, who's the ADA administrator for the RAPID. So welcome all of you. Thank you so much for being here today. And,
Thank you.
Yeah, great.
Fantastic to join you.
And you're actually all in the same room together, which will be that should really help with the discussion today. So, can you each start by giving us a brief summary of your background, your current work, and any professional or personal experience that you have with epilepsy? Amber, did you want to go first?
Sure. Currently, I work with Disability Advocates of Kent County, which is a center for independent living, and I help individuals with disabilities transition from nursing facilities back into independent community living as they choose. Prior to that, I worked with Disability Network of Mid-Michigan, which is another center for independent living, as an independent living vocational rehab specialist, independent living guide, which is kind of someone that helps build those kind of skills that you need to live independently. Working with those individuals, it was just kind of the kind of experience that comes from a passion of living with epilepsy and living with a disability so that I can give back with what I found when the services weren't there. For myself. So I wanted to help and give out to people when I couldn't find those kind of supports myself. I also did run a couple youth employment and youth college prep programs. Like I said, personally I have epilepsy, but I think it's a milder form. And I do believe I've had a degree of it all my life. It's just gotten worse as I've aged. There have been arguments in my family about, whether I had it all my life or not. But, when I was 16, I had my first grand mal seizure. And the counter-argument there was that I wasn't an absent-minded child. I was zoning out and having petit mal seizures from the age of 3. My seizures, like I said, progressively got worse as I got older, peaking when I hit college age. This was a challenge I had in and of itself because no one had diagnosed me with epilepsy yet. They had just told me this was something that happened around my menstrual cycle, and it was just something I had to deal with. Honestly, most of the doctors and medical professionals looked at me like I wasn't really telling them the truth, wondered what really was going on, if I was doing drugs, and if I was just lying to them to, just kind of, I don't know, not be honest with the supports that were in my life with my parents, and kind of, because my grades were failing and things like that. And anyway, they looked at me like I was a liar. They even threatened me with a spinal tap when I was 16. Well, we're going to have to do this if you don't tell us what's going on. And I was like, well, do it. They still didn't find anything. But when I was 20, I finally found a doctor who listened to me, was able to diagnose me properly, and I was able to start figuring out what medication I needed and what combinations of medications would work best for me. Now, all that was left for my journey was dealing with college, epilepsy, and figuring out what the heck else I wanted to do with my life. Recently, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, go ahead, you're fine.
Yeah, recently I found out from my parents that they wanted to pull me out of college as soon as I was diagnosed with epilepsy, especially my father. They wanted to keep me safe and not let me, I guess, be alone and be on my own. And that was something I never really wanted to do, never to be kind of protected and not be, I guess, isolated. So that was something that never even crossed my mind. I was struggling with school, with, the medication, with dealing and understanding the fact that I had a disability, and the little supports I had up at Central Michigan University in Mount Pleasant. So they were very terrified, and they wanted to keep me safe. However, I was really bound and determined to push through all of this and to be as normal as any other college-age person. I even started to not tell them and others, except for my doctor, how often I was having seizures because I knew it scared them so much, and I didn't want to be responsible for that fear, even when I couldn't really control the whole situation. I knew that staying up at school was the only way I was going to succeed, and I needed to figure out a way to do that. It actually frustrated me to the living end when my parents babied me and tried to control me. I thought I was 21 and invincible, and I had to figure it out. I was just frustrated in the fact that I couldn't be in the major I originally decided on. All the seizures I was having I was just losing control, and I thought that by staying up there and trying to maintain as much control as I could was the only thing I could do. And that's what I was going to do. And keep in mind, I'm not condoning, that kind of reckless behavior, but there are other ways that I've realized through my professional career and my personal life that with certain supports and things that you can live with epilepsy successfully, and that is what I'm here to talk about today. And that is what I hope that we can share here.
Right, and you touched on several issues that we'll be delving into deeper. So, thank you for that. Susan, did you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm a patient support coordinator at Hauenstein Neurosciences, which is a Level 3 epilepsy center and EBRET certified center in West Michigan. We have 6 clinicians who are part of our outpatient epilepsy center. And my role as patient support coordinator is really serving people like Amber. She just described her story. And so I am in direct contact with a lot of patients hearing stories, and I provide programming to support patients. So I have a monthly art program for people with epilepsy. It meets on the 3rd or 4th Friday of every single month, except for the weeks of the holiday. And that's been very, very helpful for people it's a peer network of people who all are kind of at various phases of managing their own epilepsy as well as managing what comes along with life. I also work trying to connect patients and families who are in need of services to people like both the other ladies who are in the room with me today, to really connect them to something that will support them with their goals of independence and really their own life goals. And it may include connecting them with people, services, technology, which is something that I personally use a lot. I have a son who has epilepsy, who is in college. He also has autism, so there's some things that we've had to do in terms of meeting with disability coordinating services within the colleges in order to make sure that there's a program in place to support him, and then be willing to review that at different times when there's bumps in the road, as there always are. And one of my outreach plans here, and something that I've been fairly successful with over the last year, is reaching out to colleges in this area, to those disability coordinating entities within those colleges, and they're different at each one, to make sure that they know who I am, so that if I have a person who is at their school who is in need of supports that they don't have, or if they are in need of a revision to supports that they have in order for them to be more successful, that's something that I can start with a conversation to them, and that person can then advocate on their own, and include some coaching for both families as well as the individuals in order to get what they want. So sometimes I think that families, and I include myself along this, is I, in my mind, had a vision of what would help my son be successful. But that's not how the system works. The system is, it's a smorgasbord that you have to pick and choose from in order to put a plan in place. And so one of the things that I work with families on is, what's that plan look like for that individual? Is it for you, that individual, to be successful, or is it for your son or daughter to be successful? And while we need to make sure that plan is in place, we also have to have a review process in order to make sure that we can tinker with it along the way to make it successful. I'm lucky in that my job is different every single day, and I really enjoy working with patients and families.
Right. Excellent. Well, and that's great that, again, we have two people with both professional perspectives to share and one person who can share their perspective as a person with epilepsy and another person who's a caregiver of a person with epilepsy. So we should have a really good discussion here. And Sarah, did you want to introduce yourself?
I work at the Rapid, which is the public transportation service here in the greater Grand Rapids area, and I've been there 18 years. I have a brother with Down syndrome who has been using the bus successfully for 25 years, the fixed route, regular public transportation. I show individuals who have disabilities other than vision how to access public transportation. I also serve roles at the Rapid to make sure that we're ADA compliant, and I am on the board of the Association for Travel Instruction, which is a national board that offers support to individuals who practice travel training, which includes one-on-one training for individuals, group training, familiarization, and we also offer senior volunteer mentors. We have seniors who will go out with others and show them how to use fixed route public transportation.
Excellent, excellent. All right, so there are many stages in life at which someone with epilepsy may want to become more independent. For the purposes of this call, though, we're not really talking about independence as something you either have or you don't have. Humans are all independent to varying degrees, and we're also interdependent. We need each other. We need other humans. So what we're really focused on is self-determination, or the ability to make your own choices and set your own goals with assistance as needed. We'll also be talking about how to eliminate or get around common barriers to independence. Because all of our panelists are from the Grand Rapids area, many of the specific resources we'll be talking about are in Grand Rapids, but similar resources exist in most metropolitan areas. Rural areas may not have quite as many resources, and that's something we'll discuss as well. Let's start by talking about how each of you view independence and self-determination in the context of epilepsy, and what some of the key factors are that affect both independence and self-determination. Amber, did you want to go first?
Sure. Well, I don't think independence or self-determination is different whether you have epilepsy or any kind of disability or you don't. I think the terms are the same. However, I do believe they're more challenging to accomplish, especially when you're trying to become independent. And I don't think you can ever fully, like you said, become independent. You're trying to become interdependent, especially working with others rather than relying only on yourself. I just don't think that's a realistic thing. I tried it. It didn't work. I failed miserably. Speaking from experience, please, by all means, if you feel you need to try and fail too, I guess that's okay. I wouldn't recommend it. But, we all have our own journeys to live. So there is a need for the individual to have supports in our lives, whether we live by ourselves or with others. They need to be there. Medical, transportation, whatever it needs to be. We need to live somewhere with access to the pharmacies, medical supports, social supports, educational supports like libraries, colleges, cultural supports, so that we can have, those access, or those, what's the word I'm trying to think of here? My mind's drawing a blank. express ourselves, you know, so we're not just...
Self-expression.
Yeah, not just kind of pent up and just to get it all out. While it can be done in rural areas, I have done that. It's just very challenging, and it takes on a different role of looking within ourselves and kind of that self-motivating aspect to say, this is what I want to do, and I'm going to do that. And if it's not there, I'm going to create it, especially in those rural areas. Also, it can be very expensive. And depending on the type of epilepsy you have, it can be very dangerous, especially if you're lacking those supports. Because I know here in Grand Rapids we have a really, really good local support as far as like adaptive equipment through Mary Free Bed and things like that, and those weren't available to me when I was up in Mount Pleasant, and I know they're not available to the majority of people in Michigan if they don't have that kind of transportation or people willing to take them to get those kind of things to help them live that independent lifestyle they're looking for. But with self-determination, it's very important, in my opinion, for us to live and to feel like we're in control of our lives as much as possible. I know we want to bring in those supports, but it's important for those supports to understand that you may have a lot of critical knowledge and you may be subject matter experts in your field, but we are subject matter experts of our lives. Don't talk down to us. Don't talk about us and around us, especially when we're in the room. You may be an expert and you may have earned that right, but again, we are in control of our own life, and you are here to support it, not control it. Accept us where we are, and accept us where we're at. We may not be ready to accept the fact that we have that disability. We may still be in denial. You know, we may not be ready to say, you know, this is what I have and these are the limitations I have. And, you know, that even though you're saying to your son, daughter, significant other, whomever, you can't do this. You can't live like these people or your peers or whatever. I don't care. This is what I want to do. And unfortunately, you're going to have to find a way to deal with that. And I'm sure Susan can speak a little bit more to that aspect of trying to deal with that. But if you don't, I can guarantee you're going to get such a rebellion on your hands that they're probably not going to talk to you for a while, if at all, or tell you what's going on in their lives. And you might lose them altogether and very quickly. And that's just a dangerous path to go down, in my opinion. And fortunately, if you deny them the self-determination altogether, that's an inevitability which you're just going to face. But if you allow them that self-determination, and even though it's a scary thing, that unfortunately is, hopefully you'll open up that conversation, that dialogue, and they'll eventually come to terms with, like everyone does, being an adult, you know, and accepting the responsibility of life and disabilities and what we need to do to succeed. And that's the beauty of self-determination and the risk and independence.
Okay, great.
In my opinion.
Susan, did you want to add to that?
Yeah. So you know, I agree a lot with what Amber said, and I think that one of the things she said resonated with me is that independence from both the person who wants to become independent and the person who is maybe the parent or a caregiver or somebody who's involved in their life who wants the independence but wants to dictate that independence. Sometimes that's a control issue. And I've wrestled with some of those things on my own, is, you know, making sure that, you know, we have a plan for safety and for those sorts of things. And one of the things that I do a lot with parents is listen. I listen both to the individual who is the patient, but I also listen to parents or caregivers, because by hearing them talk about those things, I can ask questions that help them navigate some things that are sometimes based in fear on their own, fear of an unknown, fear of something that we can once we talk about it, at least make it not an unknown, but we can also then put a plan in place that help them navigate what is a fearful situation for them, or sometimes it's fear on the part of independence. Sometimes I've been in situations where the parent wants to foster independence, but the person who's the patient does not want to be independent. It's much more comfortable for them to stay in the situation that they're in, yet parents don't live forever, and we want to create a situation where that person has an independent life, and what does that look like? And so a lot of times it's setting a framework of, again, asking the right questions, listening, and then putting a plan in place that both parties can agree to, or that at least we can start somewhere, and then agree to navigate that and change it as it evolves. And there's no timetable for a lot of these. Sometimes there is a timetable, and I've been approached when there's a parent, and sometimes an older parent has a health issue that is imperative that we find a transition plan that does have a timetable, because they want to make sure that that person is transitioned quicker, so that it happens before this person either dies because of an illness or something like that. So those are the harder situations, because you can't force anybody to transition at a certain timetable. You have to set the right framework, and that person has to embrace those transition plans in their own way. And a lot of times it's making friends with information, making friends with the new surroundings that they may be in, and all those things happen at different times for different people, because they all involve stress and learning and approaches to kind of learning something about themselves as well as the new environment. So I think that one of the things that the control issue is, I had to ask myself, am I having problems with this for me, or is it really best for me, or is it really best for my son? And I remind myself to ask myself those questions whenever I start to feel like I'm getting concerned about something. Is it right for me, or is it right for my son? And I have to make the decision as the parent of something that's right for my son, yet I also have to make the decision based on things that he may not factor into the plan. So there are things that he doesn't yet know about. Transportation is one of them, because right now we are his primary form of transportation. He does not navigate independently. So, however, that's a plan that's our plan, in our next phase of our plan. So it's something that we need to make sure that we're evolving that as we go. And I think encouraging independence of everybody, I think everybody should have self-determination and be able to have control of their own life. And what that looks like is different for everybody, but it starts with a plan from people who really care about that person. And it may be agencies, it may not be directly related to them, but it starts with a plan, and it also has a check and balance as part of it.
Speaking of planning and the amount of time it takes to transition to a more independent living situation, because so many factors affect independence, some of which you have limited control over, the road toward becoming more independent can seem quite daunting. So can you talk about the importance of planning as a way to set goals, identify internal and external resources, eliminate barriers, and then breaking goals down into manageable steps? Amber, did you want to?
So Russ, Amber's, my question is starting with, or my answer, and this is Susan, by the way, okay. Starting by actually writing what the goal is and breaking down those goals into smaller bite-sized pieces. So one plan is, if you want to be an engineer, the plan first would be, what type of training do you need to do, or what type of school do you need to be at in order to be an engineer, and then what supports do you need at that school in order to have success for that, and then off of that would be, how do you get to school? Do you live on campus, and then walk, or do you have somebody drop you off, or do you get mass transportation? Those are all parts of the same plan, but breaking it down to those individual goals to be something that is much more easy to navigate on a much larger plan. And then one of the things that I do a lot on is what type of technology can we put in place in order for there to be a check and balance of that? Is it a scheduling thing within your phone that allows you to make your class on the time, an app on your phone that allows you to make sure that you're catching the bus, that it alerts you when the bus is coming, also one that allows you to have a check-in, so at the point you get to school, texting somebody to let them know, I arrived safely. So the checks and balances that are there in order to make sure those things. And most schools now these days have automated systems that allow you to see what is due so that you can progress with whatever education it is. Or if it's a job, those checks and balances for that, of checking in, to your job each day and making sure that you have a checklist of the things that you need to do at your job. All those things are things that can be done, a plan put in place for technology. Reminders for medication is the other thing. Making sure that those are part of the plan, is that plan of adhering to a medication schedule or a healthy eating schedule to keep you on a sleep, eat, do whatever you want schedule. Those are the things that are really important. So using technology is one of the things that I encourage families to look at very, very quickly whenever they're looking at independent goals, because then it gives the confidence of that family member that that person is serious about making this transition, but also it gives the check and balances that need to be in place.
Right. And with the with the smaller, all the many different plans that you kind of mentioned, is it also important to have a master plan, like a larger plan that includes all of these smaller plans, like transportation, education, managing your seizures, all of these smaller plans within kind of a larger framework?
So I haven't found that to be helpful, and I'll be interested to see what Amber says, is sometimes having that overall master plan, and I'll give an analogy. So the master plan is that I want to work at General Motors as an engineer. So that's being the master plan. So the smaller plans, in the illustration I've already given, is that I want to go to school because I need to have some training. Maybe I'm going to be in a work-study program, so I want to work at a place that's already doing what I do so that I can get some practical experience. But I haven't found that outside that bigger master plan needs to be acknowledged, that the smaller things, how it works, at least in my experience, is life happens along the way, and once I've seen you start to put in place of, I want to work doing what I want to do, and I want to go to school, and I want to maintain my health, all those things, that master plan can be reviewed not nearly as frequently as these smaller plans, this plan in place, and doesn't really even need to be on the radar. Ideally, it has to be acknowledged because that is what fosters those smaller plans. But it's really the smaller plans that become our thing that we want to, at least, and fewer of them is better, I found, is having a bunch of things that we're all paying attention to. The priorities have got to be on health, wellness, and independence in doing what I want to do, as long as it does not hurt anybody else. And so those are the things that we really try to pay attention to in the big plan, but all these other plans of working and making it as part of our lives, that's just part of life. And I haven't found that you can dictate a plan to that level that will be successful. That's my personal experience, is life just comes along. You have a snowstorm, and you have to shovel when you didn't plan on going out and shoveling that morning. That's just life. And being able to be resilient is one of the things that I think all of us want to foster in both ourselves as well as our kids. And somehow that we need to foster that part of that resilience is plans change, and we have to have a little bit of flexibility with both the people who are caring for us as well as ourselves. And giving ourselves that little bit of flexibility will end up causing ourselves less stress. And that has to be part of the plan also, is, one, building resilience, but also minimizing the things that cause us stress that may also exacerbate our medical condition.
Right.
I agree completely. I think having that big plan, like where you have the 5, the 10-year, and maybe the 1-month goal, like in a person-centered plan, is probably a good idea to have in the back of your mind. But in my experience, I feel like those only help professionals more than they do the individual. I've sat in on too many IEPs and 504 plans and too many PCP meetings where the parents and the person or the student is so checked out, it's not even funny. And everybody, all the individuals around, all the supports are just saying, well, we think so-and-so should do this, and this has been working for them, and this has been working for them, and they're just nodding along compliantly saying, yep, we'll do this, we'll do that, and they have no idea what's going on. Now, if they maybe, because personally I think it's daunting, they look at this thick IEP or this thick plan and say, I'm never going to be able to accomplish all that. You want me to do what? How am I going to do this? And it's not manageable in my mind for them, or it wouldn't have been, it's not manageable for me. And any kind of goal setting I've ever tried to do for myself, losing weight, managing medication, eating healthy, exercising, if I set for myself, okay, I'm going to do all these things all at once, it's never going to get accomplished. If I set one manageable task at a time, that's actually been more doable for me and actually allowed me to be able to maintain that longer than anything else I go to set out. And the thing that a lot of people I don't feel recognize when we are going through this planning process is that relapse and messing up and making mistakes is part of that planning process, is part of that maintenance process, and it's okay. When you fail, it's not really a failure. You kind of stumbled a little bit. Trying to climb up that mountain to reach your goals, you can't fall off a mountain. You're still on the mountain. You just kind of tumbled down a little bit. And I really think that maybe like writing, especially with people with epilepsy, I think for me it started out with, I don't know if I'm going to make it today without having a seizure. Let's start there. That will be my first goal. And then when I did that, okay, let's work on a new goal. And start. And when I could do that for a week, then we went to a month. And then when I went from a month, I went to 2 months, and then gradually got bigger and bigger. Yeah, I had my ultimate goal of, one day graduating from college and finding a job and all that wonderful stuff, but you got to work your way up, unfortunately, and coming in with guns blazing and saying, here's your big plan, I don't know, I'm at the bottom of the mountain looking up at Everest saying, I can't do that.
Yeah, it becomes a Sisyphean task of rolling a ball uphill, and that ball then often slips and rolls over you, and
you want to give up.
And so I think that being able to set manageable goals, and frankly, IEPs are,
I hate them.
They have a place in my heart that goes cold. And so, because I've been in so many on my own, and I sit with other parents in them.
So you're not
and Sarah has her own personal experience with this, I'm sure. But I think that sometimes those goals are for those professionals and not for the success of the student, and sometimes not for the support of the parent. So I think we have to be careful with those. Sometimes those goals are meant so that it provides something on the school looks at it and says, oh, I know what that plan looks like, it means ABC. That's one thing, but that's not what a goal should be for a student. A student's goal or, a patient's goal has to be something that is attainable, but also something that can be modified and checked and balanced along the way. And it should impact them directly. It should be something that they can buy into, that they can have confidence that if they succeeded in that goal, that something happens for them. That's a good thing for them, because everybody needs to achieve something in order to get that feeling that they've achieved something. And if we make up the goals and it's something that we're achieving for ourselves, it doesn't help them. It has to be something that works for them.
It has to be something that they want to do.
Right.
Yeah.
I was in an IEP meeting with a student that was not my own child, but the boy was checked out like you described, Amber, and was writing something. And at this time when they're going through the recap, he held up a sign that said, "Too many rules." And I remember that because as I was thinking of it, I was thinking, wow, this is an awful lot to actually pay attention to. How is this boy going to do this? And he didn't know how to do it either. I mean, his answer of too many rules was exactly what it was. And, one of the things that my role in those type of meetings is to say, this is the most important thing that he's saying right now. So we can't leave here until we kind of sift those things out and figure out something else as the plan that will work for him. So I think that that's a good visual of, it's kind of like the sign that Wile E. Coyote holds up of help me. It's the help me sign. It needs to be something that's achievable.
Right. Okay, so we're going to...
I will say it is needed, though, in order to get the supports in place.
Right.
That was my last tidbit.
Right. Okay, so let's look a little more closely at some of the main considerations when planning for independence, and we've touched on many of these already. But so seizures and safety, that's one of the biggest concerns, particularly if your seizures aren't fully controlled. So for many people, that is the primary barrier to independence, the seizures and the risks associated with them. So can you talk about how people with epilepsy and their caregivers can appropriately balance the need for safety with the need for independence? And can you also discuss different technologies and safety measures that can support independence?
Well, I think first and foremost, you got to get a journal. You got to document whether it's with your caregiver, because I know when you have one, you don't know what happened, when happened, and when you're coming out of it. But in addition to that, because you got to keep a record of what's going on, how many you're having, and how long they were, so that you can keep an accurate record for your doctor and for yourself. Paying attention to your body, knowing the signs and symptoms of when one's coming on, if you can tell. If you can't, because I know some people can't, then just kind of knowing what's around you at all times, should you just be kind of the type of person that has them and you just need to drop. So kind of being aware of sharp corners, stairs, things like that, and how to keep yourself safe. When those warning signs present, obviously lie down. If you have emergency medication, take it. If you're driving, pull over. If you feel it coming on, tell me. Say, even if it's the bus driver and you're on the bus, let somebody know, hey, this is about to happen. I'm pretty sure. Don't do this, this, and this, or call an ambulance, or whatever your protocol is when you have a seizure, because hopefully by, let's say the fifth one, you have a plan in place for how you want people to react, and if not, you should. I tell my workplace every single time I've gotten a new employer, I beg them, is there any way you cannot call an ambulance? I'll sign a release. I'll do whatever you need to. Just please, I don't want to pay for an ambulance fee if I have a seizure. It's ridiculous, especially if it's not over this amount of time. They go, no, we can't do that. You know, I understand, I get it, but I ask every single time just in case. But those kind of things, those conversations need to happen. Purchasing adaptive equipment to outfit your home so that it's safe. And I know, Susan, you can talk more about the types of equipment because I don't necessarily have that. I just have a lot of pillows around my house. But because mine's a little more controlled than I know some other people's. But in trying to avoid stairs, maybe upstairs apartments, just in case something happens. Glasses that reduce glare when you're driving. They even have them for when you drive at night. So like with the oncoming traffic. So if you have that light sensitivity thing going on and it's a little more severe or pronounced, you can get those kind of glasses that don't completely make everything opaque, but prevent that, which I found was really cool and very helpful. Monitor glare guards for at work, soft lighting so you don't have to have the very, very intense fluorescent lighting, and just having those conversations with people about what it is you need to thrive in the places you're at.
Great. Anyone have anything else?
So I'm going to jump in because there's monitoring, and there's several organizations that can help families get some of the equipment, some of the more expensive monitoring. You know, there's watches and there's seizure apps for their phone. There are different types of monitoring that can be put in place. But I think the biggest thing that Amber mentioned is really having documented what your seizures look like and being able to really have something that you can make sure that you're educating others around you, so if something does happen, that at least it's not something they're unaware of. So kind of educating others around you. Also, I think that it's important to be able, what happens after that. So not just the seizure, but what happens after, so that they have an idea whether you're able to talk afterwards. So whether there's aphasia that's related with your seizures. Those are all considerations that are very, very individual, and how your seizures or your son or daughter's seizures affect them is something, being able to have that documented, not to the detail where, you know, it's prescriptive, but just having it so that it's something that others can be aware of. Training for others around you. So I know that workplace training, I think even the Epilepsy Foundation may do some workplace training for people. If you're somebody who has seizures, they can do some workplace training for HR or peers who are around you. Just simple information that's available. You know, I follow several different Twitter chats that are for people with epilepsy and for providers who provide services for those with epilepsy. And some of the times there's information on there that, you know, I didn't think of. And so it may be something that works for an individual that is something that is really, really important. So if you are having trouble kind of wrapping your arms around what works for you or what you need to have in place, doing some searches online of what other people have done is another good place to start. There's even YouTube videos of, you know, how people have kind of put a plan in place. So, you know, using technology as an education piece, but also using it to educate others or educate yourself is a good place to start. And then also making sure that if it's technology that you need that you don't have is, again, Michigan Disability Services, MRSs, Michigan Rehabilitative Services is what it is. You know, being able to go through them for some of that technology, and it's available through the Living Services. You know, over here it's Disability Advocates, Kent County, and it's different in every area, but I guarantee you every county has one of these organizations that can provide you access to an organization that can help you get some of that technology.
Great. Okay. Transportation is obviously another key consideration. If your seizures aren't fully controlled, driving may not be possible. So, Sarah, can you talk about the many different transportation options available for those who can't drive? and including those offered by the Rapid?
Sure. I was on the east side of the state, there was a worldwide conference for seniors. And how this ties in is at that conference, it was in Detroit, there was Ford and there was GM, and their biggest thing was autonomous cars. They're heavily investing in ride-share apps and things like that because as the population is aging, women outlive their ability to drive by 10 years, and men is 6 years. And then the community of younger adults is starting to not be interested in driving. They're not going to buy cars. So GM and Ford are really looking at how's this going to work. In the next 5 years, they're really saying there are going to be autonomous cars. While I don't work for any of the big three, I still think it's interesting, and it's also a sign of the times. Not everybody is interested in purchasing an automobile. Here in Grand Rapids, we have bike share apps. You can grab a bike from downtown and move it from one place to the other. You can do all this on your phone. In Palo Alto, Tesla has a car that will come and get you. It autonomously drives to your location. You call it with an app. So there's newer things now that are increasingly giving everybody mobility options, whether you're biking. On the east side of the state, there's a group called PEAC, and they're showing individuals with intellectual disabilities how to bike safely, how to bike to work, how to bike to school, and how to do it safely. Google has got, if you look at Google Maps now, there's a transit option, there's a biking option, there's a walking option. The Rapid here in the greater Grand Rapids area has shared all of they've open sourced their data so that you can get real bus time information on your phone, on Google Maps, on our website at www.ridetheRapid.org. So you put in your location and it will tell you the nearest bus stop. You can plan your trips there. There are national apps right now. There's one called Move It that will actually count. You have 23 bus stops. You're in Boston. It'll give you 23 train stations, and then it will tell you to get off and get on the C train. So it's a good time to at least consider other mobility options, and there's a lot more than there used to be. Here in Grand Rapids, we have the Bus Rapid Transit. It's the first Bus Rapid Transit in Michigan. We're opening our second in 2018. It's considered, it's like a train, it's like a light rail, but it's less expensive to provide, and people really like it. A lot of high school, college-age students are using it. A lot of Spectrum employees and Mercy Health employees, they go by the bigger hospitals here, are using this Bus Rapid Transit.
And how does that differ
so there's
from
new
traditional
things.
bus services? Sorry.
It stops. Sure. It stops less, and it has stations that look like a train station. You don't pay on board the bus, you pay on the station. It makes things go along faster. It has, there's one in Cleveland, it's much less expensive than perhaps a light rail, but it gives you that, it also has Wi-Fi on the buses. The buses look different, you pay at the station, and then a fare enforcement officer comes along and asks you for your fare. So this is the first one in Michigan, but they're looking at some of them in Detroit and the greater Detroit area. There are travel training programs in Kalamazoo. Ann Arbor started one, and Muskegon. I know that SMART is talking to this PEAC, so there are, across the state, there's more options than there have been. I'm also part of a mobility managers group, and we're looking at perhaps cross-county, cross-state, how can people get from one point to the other? We're all working together towards possibly providing non-emergency medical transportation, things that people need to get, to enjoy their lives, because all the services in the world are not helpful unless you can get to them. And so there are more options than there used to be.
Right.
And I'll pass it along.
Can you talk more specifically about the ADA paratransit services and how you're eligible for
Sure.
that? How do you apply for that? Yeah.
Sure. I'm sorry, I skipped that. ADA paratransit has to be provided to any individual who is cognitively or functionally unable to take the fixed route bus. So any place that has fixed route buses, those are the large buses that go up and down on a route, has to provide paratransit service that is the same times, the same areas, and roughly takes the same amount of time. So they're a smaller vehicle for people who are prevented by their disability from taking the bus. It's not simply that you have a disability, it just has to be, it's a process under the Americans with Disabilities Act. If Grand Rapids makes somebody ADA eligible and they're traveling to Ann Arbor, they can use the Ann Arbor ADA paratransit service or the Chicago ADA paratransit service if they give their information to their city that they're visiting. You get 21 days of service as a visitor to any other city that has ADA paratransit. And it serves, again, the same hours. The trips can take as long as a regular fixed route trip.
And this is curbside to curbside and drop-off, right?
It is actually door-to-door here in Grand Rapids. So they'll walk you to your door and pick you up from your door. And there are other options, like Uber and Lyft and those kinds of options. There are more options than there have been. Mm-hmm. And things are changing quickly.
And have you found that people with epilepsy can qualify for the ADA paratransit if, for instance, they have complex partial seizures, which may involve wandering, and, if you had to stay at a fixed route bus stop, you could, your neurologist could confirm that it would not be safe because you might wander out into the street or that kind of thing?
With the ADA, it's a case-by-case basis. So the application for the here it's called the GO bus is asking questions about people's seizures, whether or not they have an aura, whether they're well controlled. Those kinds of questions are in there. And my suggestion is if you're filling out an ADA paratransit application, you get the person that's most familiar with your most limiting condition. Perhaps your neurologist would be the better person to fill that out rather than your supports coordinator at your case management agency or at your mental health agency, or rather than just the social worker in your doctor's office, if perhaps you can get somebody a little bit more familiar with your most limiting condition. Right. And with the ADA paratransit, we can't say, like, in effect, if you have cerebral palsy, you're going to be eligible, or if you have epilepsy, you're going to be eligible. They have to look at each one on a case-by-case basis, and sometimes the terrain will figure into like if it's a very busy street, here we have 28th Street or Alpine, if those are some of the considerations. And I know in Seattle, every city is doing it differently a little bit, looking at it. In-person assessments are starting to become very common. So if you are applying for ADA paratransit in whatever city you're applying for, they may ask you to come in and do an in-person assessment. Ours here have an occupational therapist and one of our travel trainers participating in it. So it's, and the reason for that being is it's a very costly service to provide door-to-door transportation. It's also costly for the individual to take it. It's $3.50 each way to take the paratransit when it's 85 cents each way to take the fixed route bus.
Right. Okay.
Sarah, does the ADA paratransit also, can you qualify for it seasonally?
Sometimes. So an individual who perhaps has Raynaud's and can't get cold at certain times or uses a walker or mobility device, they might make you winter eligible. So when the temperature is below 35, that individual might be eligible for transit. Or when there's ice and snow present, they might be eligible for transit.
Great. And
I think what Sarah mentioned of having somebody involved with your medical care who knows your least or your most limiting disability is extremely important. As service recovery, if somebody comes to me and says, I can't use the Go Bus anymore, or I haven't been able, and Sarah and I have had conversations about this because that actually was a case. It's generally that the person who's helped them fill out a form has not provided as detailed information about that person's information that's affecting them as they need to. And so sometimes it's as simple as getting that revised and having that information corrected in order for that person to get some travel accommodations. And it really, really is important. And I think the traffic counts of, crossing a really super busy street, if that's not something that they can do successfully, then there has to be another way. So I think that that's something that people like Sarah and her role here, they're paying attention to it, and most other organizations are as well. It's just making sure that you're giving the right information in order to get those services.
Right. Okay, so let's move on to another common consideration, which is cognitive function or memory and thinking. Epilepsy can be associated with a variety of problems with cognitive function, anywhere from intellectual disabilities to memory and attention problems to difficulties with executive function or things like planning and organization. That can make it harder to succeed in post-secondary education, harder to find and keep a job, and manage day-to-day responsibilities. So can you talk about some of the strategies and resources that can help people with epilepsy and cognitive disabilities maximize their independence?
First and foremost, honesty. With the people you encounter on a daily basis, it's worked the best for me, and I tell that to all the people that I work with. I know it's hard. I know it's challenging because, you kind of, it's embarrassing. It is. It's something really embarrassing when you're presented at work and your boss says, look, you need to give this presentation in front of 40 people, and you're like, well, I say a lot when I'm presenting because I lose my train of thought. So you got to come up with different ways to remember this. For example, I wrote everything verbatim about what I was going to say for this conference or this little learn and share thing so that I could follow my train of thought. And I know I'm still saying and I know I'm still kind of bouncing around here, but it's still helping me a lot. And letting people know what you need, where you need it, and how you need to move forward. As far as college goes or education, reaching out to those disability services, whether they're excellent or poor, reaching out to them and taking advantage of them. In my experience, they weren't the best, but that doesn't mean they haven't gotten better. And advocating for what you need. I know a lot of teachers expect you to say in advance, I'm not going to make it to this exam, Professor so-and-so. I need to go to the disability services because I think I'm going to have a seizure on Thursday. How do you prepare for that? That's just really impossible and improbable to say, it's Monday, I'm going to have a seizure on Thursday. No, that's not doable. But letting them know that this kind of stuff just pops up and I wasn't able to study because I had a seizure and then I had to sleep the rest of the day, with that kind of upfront honesty, they're going to be more understanding. Instead of kind of hiding it and then Thursday comes around and you bomb the exam because you just wanted to go for broke or because you can't focus because of the lighting or whatever your accommodations need, let them know. And all kinds of technology. I know there's this pen out there that records things like lectures, all that stuff, and allows you to take notes at the same time. Because I need to take copious notes, whether I'm in meetings, lectures, whatever it is, for planning purposes, because I forget. I have a paper planner, I have an electronic planner on my phone, and I have my Outlook calendar. so that I can use all three to make sure I know what I'm doing, because I have to put every single minute of every single day of what I do into a database so that we can, get our funding and everything. Well, most of the time I can't do that on a daily basis, and, timesheet day comes and I can't remember what the heck I did last week. And I know I'm not the only one that has that kind of problem, and they don't have epilepsy, so being able to, put those kind of devices in place and knowing what you need is just kind of, being responsible and understanding those kind of things. So,
great.
Yeah.
Have anything to add?
So I would just add, I love the technology solutions, because anytime I've encountered something, there's something, I find things that I don't know about that can be put in place. And two that I think are my favorite is the voice-to-text, is being able to write papers or do a schedule by doing voice-to-text. I do that all the time myself, but also I coach a lot of families on adding reminders for medication, adding reminders for even the journaling. So if you have a seizure journal, being able to voice text what happened because you can't see the letters to be able to type it. And even if it's not exactly accurate, even if the voice text doesn't get a lot of it correct or some of it correct, it's still good enough of being able to record that and being able to record the date and time that it is in order for you to have that information to be able to use later at a doctor's appointment. It's really critical information. Books on Bookshare is the other thing. So Bookshare is a federal program that provides every book in a format that can be accessed on a computer. And it's often used for people who are blind or people who can't hold a book, or people who are in a position where they need to have assistive in order to be able, they can't get out to a library. So it's books on tape on a kind of a mega process. So all of them are online. It's an app that you can access it from both iOS as well as Android. And what it allows you to do is not only download the book, textbooks or your New York Times bestsellers are also on there, but it allows it to read it to you. So if you're cognitively in a place where you can't read that book at that point, Bookshare will allow you to choose a voice to actually read it to you and still do your reading that you need to for class in a way that you can actually consume it without having to read the book yourself. So it gives a way for people to be able to do that. So those are two that, my son actually uses Read2Go, which is the app on the iPhone for Bookshare, and uses it all the time. And it allows him to actually do it, with his headphones in when he's in the midst of somewhere where he can't read. That's one of his first warning signs that he's going to have a seizure, is that he can no longer read. And then, it's only a matter of time before a seizure will hit. So it still allows him to make progress on some of those things. So that, and scheduling calendar appointments and things like that, and just your apps that the schools provide for homework, the notifications, and for timetables.
Blackboard,
yeah. So it's called Canvas for other.
Yeah.
So every one of the things that I work a lot with colleges about is sometimes there's professors who don't choose to use Blackboard or Canvas or whatever it is. And I wish there was a way that colleges would put this little icon that said whether that professor used Canvas or Blackboard or not. Soon there will be, I've been warned about this, there's going to be a rating thing for professors on whether they actually used it or not. And so, all of us are used to, doctors have rating systems now of, whether the doctor spent enough time with you or whether they made eye contact, all those sorts of things. Why are there not things out there for professors in exactly the same way?
There is, but it's more of a personal thing. It's called ratemyprofessor.com.
Right.
But it's the students that do it, and there's even a hotness scale. It's kind of inappropriate, but
so those sorts of things should be available so that whether that's as somebody who would be using some of those things, whether that's something that you can rely on that information being accurate. And I would say one other thing about is honesty, is being proactive in letting your professor know if here's the plan if this happens. If this happens, here's the plan. So you can't help if something happens. You can't help if you have a seizure and you have to sleep because that you're coming out of a seizure. But here's the plan of what I'm planning to do because that happened. And that's the next step, is being able to kind of, but that also requires forethought of having a plan in place. So helping your student think through some of those things of what those plans would be is also helpful.
Great. So we talked a little bit about post-secondary education during that conversation, so that kind of leads into employment, which is the goal for many people, or other forms of financial self-sufficiency. The most common way to get that, of course, is through employment, but in some cases, Social Security disability benefits may be an appropriate alternative. Can you talk about resources and strategies that can help people with epilepsy and other disabilities obtain employment, and also about some alternatives to employment that can provide you with some level of financial self-sufficiency? I know we talked about Michigan Rehabilitation Services, so that's one, but does anyone else want to talk about some other resources or strategies for employment?
There's also Goodwill over here in Michigan Works. Will work with you as well. MRS will refer a lot of people to Centers for Independent Living to help build those employment skills and soft skills, and that's what I used to do and am starting to do again, actually. But yeah, and even they start it in the schools now too. Youth employment programs, classes, things like that, and asking your ESA and ISD what I can do to help my student or to get better prepared for this employment and financial self-sufficiency is probably the best start I can think of without being over-redundant and wordy.
Sure, and transition planning in the school is definitely a service that is vastly underutilized. Yeah. A lot of people don't even know that that's something that's available or that they should be doing. So,
I also think that transition planning doesn't always look like what we, as professionals who may be working, want it to look like. And so being willing to, I know many families who are doing their own sort of work program. They find places for their student to work to gain some of the skills, and that there's a feedback loop as part of that, and sometimes thinking outside the box about those things in order to be able to think of something that will help them have success, but also build some skills. It doesn't, even for my own kids, it doesn't look like what I want it to look like, and we're making up as we go, and being willing to that's a harder road, because there's nobody that says, here, do this. It's not in a box, but it is something that I think will build success, and asking around, asking other parents what they have done, sometimes what I have found helpful. There's somebody's probably walked in you're going to walk in their footsteps, or they've already walked that path. So asking them and talking to other parents is really, really important. So kind of like your own support group, for parents, or for students also, because other students who can ask other students, hey, how are you working here? Or can you help me understand what I would need to have in order to get a job here? Those are things that, self-advocating are very, very important. Again, technology. There are websites now that are for people with disabilities who organizations actually filter jobs into those and it usually has criteria, the things you'll need to have in place. It also then, if you don't have some of those skills, like a certificate that you can get online, it will have a link to that in order for you to be able to process some of that information and put a plan in place in order to do that certificate.
I will also say that MRS can help you with what is known as the Ticket to Work if you are on SSI or SSDI, and that's a program that can help you learn how to work without losing your benefits. And eventually, if you want to wean off your benefits, because you're working so much and you've gotten a job that pays well, they will help you do that. And that's a great option if that's something you want to look into.
This is Sarah. There's one thing, if you're on SSI, you can get an income-related work expense. It's called an IRWI, and you can, if you take so many paratransit trips, you can call your paratransit office or your fixed route and get a receipt for the trips that you take. So if you buy a $30 bus pass and take the fixed route, you can get income-related work expense reimbursed through SSI.
Oh, great.
Well, that's a good tip.
And that's if you're using paratransit to get to employment?
Or fixed route, any income-related work expense.
Great.
Yep. So if you're using something to get even taxi or whatever you're using, if you can get a receipt and submit it, it's income, because you have a disability, you need this service, or don't drive, you need this service, and it's supporting you in your work.
Great.
So I want to mention a little bit something about Uber and Lyft, because those are services that are available. You can access them via cell phone, and definitely they work. All of them have rating systems for their drivers for are they safe, were they there when you wanted them, all those sorts of things. You know, being careful with that. You know, everybody's heard a story. You know, you don't have to look very far in Michigan to even hear really bad stories about Uber drivers or Lyft drivers that have not been good drivers, or maybe even good people. Lyft, I have found, so Lyft has a federal program that they partner with medical institutions. It's much more carefully scrutinized than Uber. I have people who use both. My son, in fact, uses Uber. What we have found is there are drivers that who we have been able to use over and over again that have been very, very good for us. And that's part of it is, you know, trying the program with that safety net in place in order to have success, in order to be confident that that program will work. But I do know that Lyft may have a program at wherever you get your medical care to provide you services back and forth to your doctor. If you live in an area that's outside the range of public transportation. So in our area, if you're in certain counties that are beyond our public transportation, that's not accessible. So Lyft does provide those services at a discount and partners with institutions. So check into Lyft to see whether that's available for at least for going back and forth to your medical institution. But they also have it for educational places as well. I know University of Michigan has a specific Lyft transport, and they do it for people in wheelchairs. So, again, finding out about those through your local disability office might be something that you need to peel back those layers a little bit, but those are out there.
Okay, great. So I just want to let the listeners on the call know that we are going to have some time for Q&A and discussion. And actually, would you guys be willing to stay on just like 5 to 10 minutes longer if necessary? The speakers?
Sure. Yeah. Everyone nodded.
Great. Okay. So one last thing I wanted to cover before we open it up for questions is the area or the topic of your living situation. So having your own home is another common goal for those working towards increased independence, but this may not be attainable for or appropriate for everyone. So cost, location, and who, if anyone, you live with are all important considerations. So can you briefly talk about some of the different living arrangements and how a person with epilepsy can choose which situation is best, and then also talk about some state and local resources that can help with that.
There are lots of different housing options available, from subsidized housing, housing vouchers, low income, AFCs, group homes, CMH housing, which over here is called Network 180 or Thresholds. There are many different options, but what you and your supports need to figure out is what's going to work best for you and what you want. Do you want to live with a roommate? Do you feel that you need the support of supportive housing through group home or an AFC or, thresholds or something like that? Or do you feel like you could live independently with, say, a roommate, or by yourself? Where are you at right now is probably the starting question, and then the next question is, what do you want, in my opinion. I will say, as far as housing vouchers go in Grand Rapids, the wait list is ridiculous if they're even open. I think the last time I checked, it was like 2 years for the Grand Rapids Housing Commission housing vouchers, and that's, for those of you who don't know, a housing voucher pays for your rent once you get it, and once it's been approved as far as like the living situation once you found one. Subsidized housing is housing that's based on your income. So if you only get SSI, they will take 30% of your income, and that's how much your rent is. Low income is just generally low income. They say low income is like $600 to $800 to $900 over here, and I don't know about you, but that's not that low income for me. So I think it all just depends on the area you choose to live in, because I know if you're in a rural area, that's low income is probably more like $300 to $500 a month in terms of rent. As far as resources to help find this housing, Centers for Independent Living can help you find the resources. We have an information and referral line that you can always contact and say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Can you help me? Can you give me some numbers that I can start calling for? Do you have any housing lists, properties, these kind of things? And we can help you with that. And we can sure give you those kind of things. Another great number for the whole state of Michigan is 211. And they will, and that's the number that you can contact, and based on your area code that you're calling from, will reroute you to the appropriate person, and you can ask whatever kind of information and resource you're looking for, whether it be housing, transportation, employment, whatever we've talked about today, and they can help you with that. MSHDA is also another source. That one can be a sticky one to get through. That's the Michigan Housing Department, and they can help, but because they're such a big government agency, it's not as helpful as maybe contacting your local agencies.
Okay, anything else quick to add to that?
I'd like to add that sometimes when people move outside the cities into these, like here we have Cedar Springs or some of these outlying areas, the rent is cheaper, but you're going to end up paying the cost of not having any transportation. The further out you go, the cheaper the rent is. I know this because I just looked for apartments myself for the first time in 36 years, and I'm back downtown. I pay more, but I don't have a car. So you have to weigh those options. Wherever you're moving, wherever you're working, call transit, find out what goes there, because we may not all drive forever. I mean, even those without epilepsy. It needs to be a consideration. Sure, I can get out there, but are there sidewalks? Could I walk to the grocery store? Is that possible? And, is there anything? The township I just moved in from has no transit, and they have no sidewalks. They have no infrastructure. It's cheaper to live out there, but at what cost?
Right, that's a really good point. Okay, so we're going to open it up for questions now, and so just hold with me for a second here. Okay, does anyone have a question, or anyone have something they'd like to share in terms of your experiences with trying to become more independent or assisting a loved one in doing so? Anyone have any experiences you want to share, or any questions for our panelists?
Well, this is Marissa calling. And I would like to share a question and a comment. My question is, now in regards to the living, what do you suggest if you had someone living with you, or maybe 2 or 3 people living with you, or by yourself?
Okay.
Anybody?
In terms of what would we recommend?
Yes.
I would think it would depend on your personal situation. For me, I live by myself, but I know other people, they need to have someone there, because their seizures are more rampant, very unpredictable, and not really controlled. So they need to have, someone there to kind of monitor those issues. And it all depends, too, on whether or not you have the assistive technology put in place and you have that planning put in place to be able to live by yourself or independently. It's really a very complex question on whether you want to and what kind of you have in place. Personally, I'm able to do it, and I like living by myself. But if you don't feel comfortable doing that and you need that kind of person there just because it makes you feel more comfortable, that's what I would really strongly encourage.
Okay.
I kind of have a little more anxiety, so not having that person there when I'm at home, that's what I need as far as my space. But
I would say understanding what works for you or whomever you're trying to, make the decision or choices for or with. I don't think they're cut or dry, and I think one of the things that you have to ask yourself is what makes you successful, and is this what it always looks like? So are your seizures seasonal, or are they unpredictable? In which case, what does it look like if that were to happen? So doing a worst-case scenario plan and a best-case scenario plan, and then also, making sure that there are, if you decide to go with one over another, having a plan B, a safety net for that in order to make sure that you're taken care of at whatever time. And it's just not a cut and dry.
Okay.
Right.
Well, also my comment is that I have the epilepsy, and keeping my attitude positive and my mental state of mind positive. I had just found out, I'm going to go to the doctor tomorrow to get a second opinion. I may have skin cancer as well. And it took me for a loop, but trying to keep from being depressed and staying down, I've been keeping my attitude and keeping a positive attitude and thinking positive. So it has been, kind of devastating having the seizures plus knowing this, but, I don't want to keep myself down.
And
well, Marissa, we'll wish you the best on that will come out, positive rather than, having skin cancer. But one of the things that is available through technology and even through phone is support groups for people to help understand both the skin cancer part, if that does turn out to be the diagnosis, as well as the epilepsy part. And just that support of somebody else who can relate to what you're going through is really, really important. And so there are online support groups and phone support groups that are extremely helpful. And I would, over here we have Gilda's Club, which is the other resource, is community-based support groups that help support you through some of those diagnostic transitions. So maybe that's a conversation you might be able to have with Russ later about kind of finding some of those in order to make sure that you have that support in place to support you through this.
Right.
Okay.
I will
We
also
have Project Uplift, which is a phone-based depression self-management program too. So you can learn some skills for managing depression if that's something that you're or managing symptoms of depression. So we can get you signed up for that if you're interested. So
sounds good.
I will also say that finding a some kind of creative outlet, any hobby, anything you're interested in, any kind of activity that you can get involved in will help with keeping that attitude positive and staying hopefully in that good light.
Our art program, which is monthly, does that as supportive for people. What people have told us is they look forward to it, and it becomes something that they can practice even while they're home, right. Is looking for opportunities to, have an outlet.
Right, and we have our monthly program here in Detroit too. And again, if you want to call me after this call, I can give you all the relevant information on that as well. So, other questions?
Okay.
Anyone else?
Yes, this is Matthew Miller. I got so many questions. Thank you, ladies. But one question. I took this ADA bus around my community in Monroe, Michigan, and when I came out to get the bus, the driver looked at me and said, "You don't look like you're handicapped." But I can't really function when bus routes. It confuses me. So that's why I had to take this. That's why I had to take the bus that way.
You don't have to explain that to anybody. Matthew, did you call the transit agency and tell them that?
No,
because that's a violation of your civil rights.
Well,
that's a violation of your civil rights, though. Nobody has any way. They shouldn't be judging you on appearance at all, and that's not the driver's place.
I just felt bad, so I don't use it anymore.
If I may say, I've been through the same thing.
And then I took this computer class. Yeah, I know, but I've been trying to take this computer class, and I've taken I took 3 classes. I took one from local class. I took from a college class, and I took one from the library. And I'm learning a little bit, but it seems like I'm slowing the other people down. And I'm trying to find a class or someone that could just sit down with me individually and help me go a little bit my speed.
Sure.
Instead of, because I'm holding people down, and I just feel bad about it.
A lot of high school students are starting to volunteer with seniors, and I'm not sure that you're a senior, but maybe if you called the local high school and said, do you have any volunteer requirements? Because what I tend to do when I have a phone question is hand it to my kid. And if you don't have that option, if you could find a lot of our high school students are really savvy, and they have to get in volunteer hours. And that way maybe you could get one-on-one attention.
That's a great idea.
And that way you're also you're helping the student get their volunteer hours.
There's also a disability network of Wayne County.
South of there, because you're in Monroe, right, Matthew?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so there's, depending, I want to Google, but depending on where you're at, I think it serves, I'm pretty sure it serves your area, but they might offer one-on-one computer training classes, and I don't know if you're trying to get trained on a computer just for your own personal knowledge or if you're looking to gain employment skills or those kind of things, but either way they might be able to offer those kind of services to you, and they might even be willing to come out to you to offer those services. If it's through employment, like you want to build up your resume or whatever it may be, checking out MRS and saying, look, this is what I want to build up. Can you help me? And starting and getting enrolled with them, they will work with you on a one-on-one basis to build up that skill.
Is that like Machine Works?
Better. It's better. because it's not just a bunch of people milling around saying, here's the computer, go find a job. You go in, you get a one-on-one counselor, and you meet regularly. And they say, okay, what kind of employment are you looking for? What's your disability? How can we help you? Those kind of things. And they send you out they either work with you one-on-one or they send you out to the right kind of services to get you accomplished in that goal. Every county has an MRS, a Michigan Rehab Services.
The other thing I'd say, Matthew, is
Michigan Rehab Services.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. The other thing I'd say is that it sounds like you were at a community college or a college.
Yes.
To take one of these.
I'm 53 years old.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
That's why I want to.
One of the things that colleges provide, though, are through the disability office within the college is a plan for you to have success. And so, one, you already know that you need one-on-one training, and you also need perhaps a more methodical teaching method in order for you to be successful. That's great. You now know that. So that's information that I suggest you take to the disability office at the college and let them know that you were in a class and you were not having success. You'd still like to have success with that class. They might let you take it again, and they might put a plan in place for you to have success. Okay. So not taking what happened, that's information that is good to make a plan B. So this is where you say, okay, I learned something from this about myself, and the plan B is that I'm going to go in and have them help put some programming in place in order for me to be successful. And they can do that as part of that disability office.
And technically, they have to.
Yeah, she's absolutely right.
If you reach out to them and say, this is what I need, within reasonable accommodations, they have to provide them. You can't say, well, I need this $5,000 computer. That's not reasonable. But
yeah, I understand that too. Right. I just feel guilty. I can't drive. I drove before, but I can't drive, and that depresses me quite a bit now. And I'm seeing a psychiatrist about that, and it just drives me crazy. I can't drive, and I know I'm holding everyone else up. One question: I carry around a appointment book, and my coworker always calls it, here comes Matt and his Bible. And
own it.
Yeah, I call it my brain, so I call my appointment book my brain because it tells me where to go. But
so Matthew, I'd be happy to talk with you afterwards about all of these things that you brought up, and we can hook you up with your local Michigan Rehabilitation Services office. We can talk about getting that using the paratransit services and even reporting that civil rights violation as well. So if you want to call me afterwards, we can talk more about that. Does anyone else have?
Okay.
We have maybe time for one more question. Does anyone else have a question?
My name is Kim, and are you there?
Yep.
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay. My name is Kim, and I have two quick questions. One is speaking about housing, and the other is speaking about safety. I have been living here like 18 years. I'm in an apartment, and I get $733 a month for SSI, and my rent is $675. And I've been calling all around, like apartments and everything, like Section 8 is closed, and I can't find anything to help with me for housing, and I live in Grand Blanc, and I even checked Davison next to me, and there's like 2-year waiting list for some places, and you said something about a housing phone number. I just wondered if you had any information on that.
Well, where I would start is the number that you can call is 211. That's just your general resource information number. the Disability Network of Flint over there might be able to provide you with housing resources. They cover Grand Blanc, Flushing, Davison, Carmen Ainsworth, all of those areas over there. I guess my starting point would be to try and contact your local supports to get some housing lists, subsidized housing lists, and see what you can do and go from there. I don't want you living in Flint, though.
Yeah, I hear you.
No,
well, my other question real quick is, I have non-epileptic seizures, and they are, like, very often and very strong, and I get weak constantly, and I'm falling down all the time. And you had said something about safety, like, one person said about pillows, and the other lady was going to give some answers, too. And I just wondered if you had more information about safety.
So you provided information about the non-epileptic seizures. So
yeah, and I mean, medicine's not really helping me. I do take medicine, but it's not really helping. And I mean, they're just out of control. And I mean, I'm weak a lot, and sometimes I even get paralyzed and can't even speak. And they're very strong and frequent.
Right. So there are new thoughts on non-epileptic seizures and then other therapies that you can do to diminish some of the frequency of some of those seizures. We have a brand new program over here that we're just launching about that. I would ask your healthcare provider about a program, whether it's biofeedback or whether it's one of the other therapy programs that can be activated for you for some of those. But separate from that safety issue, because those are things that you can do to maybe help that, but the safety issue is making sure that you are aware of your surroundings and making sure that things aren't on the stove. I've known people who've changed their cooking methods so that they're microwaving things and not having things on the stove that can boil over or burn or all those sorts of things. A therapy pet, that is not something that, you can have at every place you live, but it does often help in terms of
they might be able to sense.
They honestly can't. Cats more often than dogs. So, seeing whether you're eligible for that. Again, living where you live might not be able to have a pet, but
I have 3 cats, and I actually have one that will lay on my shoulder or whatever when she senses when I'm going to have seizures, and she just kind of stays by me.
Okay. So again, writing those down, writing the things that you notice in order to start kind of building a framework of what is the reality for you are the things that I would recommend, because then it gives you that framework of things that you need to have in place in order to be safe.
I will say also, when I first started at 16 till about the time I was 20, and when I got a new doctor, they diagnosed me with non-epileptic seizures. Said that they were caused randomly by stress and, various other stimuli. And they were very strong seizures like you're describing here. And I did everything I could. I tried different holistic approaches, with the supervision of my doctor and everything like that, to try and get them under control. It didn't work, and my doctor just wouldn't listen to me. This was something a little bit more violent than what he was really looking at. So I did a little bit of research on the different types of epilepsy and the different kinds of doctors who were forefront in their field. And I drove to Henry Ford from Grand Blanc for my doctor. And then when I moved to different cities and stuff, to Mount Pleasant and now to Grand Rapids, I still drove to him. Which, is expensive and tedious, but he was the one that helped me the most and worked on different medication combinations to get them under control. And luckily, knock on wood and particle board, it's been 8 months since a petite mal.
Wow.
You know, where you're kind of like phasing out and zoning out, and it's been over a year since the grand mal. So.
Right. So definitely you're making sure the diagnosis is correct and making sure you're getting the best possible treatment is key. So we do have to wrap it up, and I thank you, all of the speakers, for staying on a little extra. I really appreciate that. I'm sure the participants do as well. So thank you all for being a part of this call. It has been recorded, so we'll have it up hopefully on the website soon. So if you need to go back and listen to anything, you can do that. And again, thank you all to Amber, Susan, and Sarah for sharing all the great information you shared today.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If anyone has any follow-up questions, feel free to call me at 1-800-377-6226, extension 1302. Thanks again, everyone.